Let's make a dress. Specifically, let's make this dress, which is also this top and is also this current dress that I'm wearing. It is a super easy, beginner-friendly, do-it-yourself project that involves no pattern. It only involves the ability to cut out rectangles and sew a straight line. So if you can do those two things, stick around and I will show you how to make this elastic-heated summer dress. Let's get into what you are gonna need for this dress. So you are gonna need elastic, safety pins, 2 to 3 yards of fabric, depending on how much volume you want, thread, and I like to fill up 3 bobbins, fabric scissors, chalk or fabric markers. The first measurement that you need is your bust at the fullest point. Whatever that is for you, mine is 103 centimeters or 40.5 inches. The next thing that you are going to need is the measurement for the length that you want the bodice to be. I want mine to hit at my waist because I'm making a dress, and so my bodice is going to be 32 centimeters or 12.5 inches. Next, you need your hip width at the largest point. Mine is 120 centimeters or 47 inches. And the last measurement that you need is your skirt length. I'm going to measure from my waist down since that's about where I want my bodice to hit, right at the waist. And I like a midi length, so my skirt is going to be around 84 centimeters or 33 inches long. Okay, let's review. These are my 4 measurements. My bust measurement is 103 centimeters or 40.5 inches. The length of the bodice that I'm going to be using is 32 centimeters or 12.5 inches. My hip width is 120 centimeters or 47 inches, and the skirt length that I want is 84 centimeters or 33 inches. Okay, let's make the bodice. I want a bodice that is bigger than my bust, so I'm going to multiply my bust by 1.5. That gives me the measurement of 155 centimeters. However, my fabric is only 150 centimeters, and I'm just going to cut it down to that because I don't want to mash together and have to sew in other pieces. So I'm going to make my bodice 150 centimeters or 59 inches wide, and as we discussed, 32 centimeters or 12.5 inches long. I need 2 bodice pieces for this dress. Now, I'm going to take my hip measurement, which is 120 centimeters, and I'm going to multiply that by 1.5 as well, just like I did with my bust. And that's going to give me 180 centimeters or around 70 inches. And as I mentioned, I have fabric that is 150 centimeters. So regardless, I'm going to have to cut out 2 pieces here and attach them together in order to get this width that I'm looking for. This means that I'm going to need 2 pieces of fabric that are 90 centimeters, but I'm going to round that up to 100 just because, like, why not? I don't know, it's easier in my brain when I see 100. So I'm going to make this skirt 84 centimeters long. Again, I've already taken that measurement. And so my final skirt piece is going to be 100 centimeters wide and 84 centimeters long. I am also going to need, again, 2 of these pieces that I'm going to join together to make the final skirt. There's also a chance that you're going to want a skirt lining. You also might not have to line your skirt. I've actually never lined this dress before, but I'm using this fabric that's kind of an eyelet fabric, which has like these little holes in it. And so, you know, it's very summery, it's very cute, but it kind of makes it see-through. So your lining piece, again, just has to be as wide as your bodice is. So I'm going to make this lining piece 150 centimeters wide. I'm also going to make it 74 centimeters long, just to make it like a little shorter than the main skirt. Okay, quick review. Here are all the pieces that I need. I need 2 bodice pattern pieces. I need 2 skirt pieces, and I need 1 lining piece. At this point, if you're smart, you could use some butcher paper or printer paper and make these out so that you can use this again in the future. Okay, there are a couple things we need to do before we actually get started, right? So the first thing you need to do is even out the edges of all your fabric, make sure it's even on both sides. This is just like cut a little section of it, rip it off, etc. Iron your fabric. You can't skip this, unfortunately. You have to iron. You're going to see me ironing throughout this whole video. It makes your piece so much better. You also have to mark your fabric, right? I'm going to mark directly on my fabric. I'm not going to cut this out on paper first. I'm going to cut directly on the fabric. And then that's it. I'm going to cut the pieces, and I'm going to put all my pieces together, label them so that I know what is what. And now the fun part, the assembly. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to finish the sides of all of our pattern pieces just to get that kind of done and out of the way. I'm going to use a serger, but you can use a zigzag stitch on the side, but just make sure that you get all of the pieces because this will just make your life easier later. So again, a zigzag stitch or serger. You could also potentially do a French seam here. I've never done that. Well, I've done a French seam, but I've just never done it on this particular dress because I feel like it takes a little bit longer and it might get a little bulky when you get to attaching the skirt. So, but that's always an option, right? You could always do a French seam if you want something that's a little bit cleaner. But I'm gonna go ahead and serge and finish all of the edges of all of these pattern pieces. Alright, I have serged all of the pieces. They're nice and finished. So it's time to assemble the bodice. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my two bodice pieces and I'm going to put them right sides together. So I'm going to put them right sides together and I'm going to pin across one long side of the bodice. So I'm going to go ahead and pin that all the way across and I'm going to sew it at a 1 centimeter seam allowance. So I'm basically just joining the two bodice pieces together. Then I'm going to iron that seam open and I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to iron it again. So that way I'm going to be working with the right side of the bodice, but I'll sort of show you that process a little bit more. Okay, I'm drying my hair, which if you have curly hair, you know, takes quite a bit of time. But luckily we have quite a bit of time because we are going to make the channels on the bodice. And this does take a little bit, but it is good practice if you are a beginner because you can make straight lines, or it will help you practice making straight lines. You're going to make a lot of them. I like to space them out about a centimeter and 1.25 centimeters is usually right for me. And I like to do that because I know my lines are not always the most straight. And so if I space them out just a little bit more, and if they get like a little wonky toward the end, I'm still going to be able to fit in my 1 centimeter elastic. So I like to give myself a little more room than the 1 centimeter. Okay, so this is a foot that I use in my machine. This is probably not the most advanced version of this. There are other sort of magnetic seam guides that I think are a little bit more efficient, but this is something that I really recommend if you are a beginner and you're just trying to learn how to sew lines that are straight, right? Like sometimes we just need a little bit of a scaffold, of a crutch, of something to be able to do that. And so I'm like dependent on this thing. Otherwise, I don't know. I've never really been able to do like straight lines when I'm like drawing. I don't know. Not very coordinated. So I'm going to put this at 1.25 centimeters, which is actually just like right there. And so if I sew with my needle all the way over here, that's going to be about 1 centimeter, 0.25. So definitely recommend this. And now what I'm going to do on the bodice, this is the bodice. I'm going to start from the top right here. I'm going to do one line that is just 1.25 centimeters from the top. And that's going to be the first sort of line. I'm not going to put elastic on that one because if you can see, it has the sort of folded in seam allowance inside. So that's just going to be the top. And so that gives it kind of like a nice little ruched effect over here. You'll see sort of when we insert the elastic. So the first line is going to be no elastic. Then we're going to alternate. We're going to do one line with elastic, one line without elastic, one line, etc. So I am going to, I'm just going to do 1.25 centimeter lines all the way across this whole thing. And again, it's pretty long. So it's going to take quite a bit of time. That's why we have the 3 bobbins as well, because you're going to use a lot of thread doing this part. But this is the most time-consuming part of the whole process. So, you know, that's okay. And I would set aside probably like 30 minutes to an hour of just making lines. And then we'll come back together and attach the skirt. Okay, it is like an hour later, and I'm done making all of the channels. I've made all of the lines. I want to also just show you that like my lines are super crooked. So here's the end of one of the channels. So this is a channel and that's the end. And as you progress, you realize that like there's about an inch here and there's like half a centimeter here. That's the same line. And so that shows you that I didn't make straight lines all the way through. There were some crooked ones, and that's okay, right? So this is a very forgiving dress. When you rouge this all up and you put the elastic in, it's gonna just go shroop. So if you're looking at your thing and you're like, my God, my lines are not straight, as long as there's enough space for your elastic to go through, this is all gonna come out in the wash, okay? So this is all gonna be fine. I'm gonna set this aside for a second because we're done for the bodice. With the bodice for now, we have to make the skirt. This is now easy. I think that the next hard part is going to be inserting the elastic. We'll get there. Although this hasn't really been that hard, but anyway. We will set the bodice aside for now, and then I am going to attach the skirt lining to the main skirt. So I have to gather the main skirt to make it fit the lining. I'll show you how I'm going to do that. Okay, now I have one large piece for my skirt. There's a seam going down here, so we'll get to that in a second. But the next thing that I need to do is I need to gather this skirt to make it smaller, right? Because what I ultimately want to do is I want it to fit this bodice. And this bodice is about, you know, this long, but this skirt is much longer, right? Well, not much, yeah, no, it's much longer, right? So there's that much difference here. This is where the bodice ends, and that's how much skirt is left. So I have to gather it so that it fits the bodice. Personally, I am gonna be adding lining, right? I'm adding a piece of lining, but this is the same size of the bodice. So the task is the same. I need to make this skirt the same size as this lining or the same size as the bodice, because again, the lining and the bodice are the same size. So I am going to gather this until it fits my lining, and that's how I will know that it's gonna fit my bodice. Okay, let's do that now. All right, so I gathered the skirt to the lining, as you can see here. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna attach that lining. Again, your goal is to make your skirt the same length as your bodice. My lining, same size as my bodice. So I'm going to attach this, and then I know that this will fit the bodice. So if you're not attaching a lining, you're skipping this part because you don't have to sew anything. But if you are doing a lining, do that first. And then let's jump into attaching this skirt to the bodice. Okay, things are really coming together now, which is exciting. I have the entire skirt and lining attached, so I have one piece. I kind of like adding a lining. I've never really done this before. I think I did it once, because now I don't have to worry about my gathering kind of falling apart because I already, you know, sewed it together to the lining. So it's just like nice and firm. But if you didn't do a lining, that's okay. Just take it from this step on. Okay, so I'm going to put my skirt down so I can kind of see the whole thing. Okay. And then I'm going to look at my bodice. Now, again, there's a seam going down the side of the skirt that I want to match up to the side of the bodice. I know one side of the bodice is going to match one side of the skirt easily because we have to close the whole thing. But in order to do that, I am going to take this bodice, just like fold it in half, like so. And then I am going to mark the halfway point so that I know where the seam of the skirt should go. Okay, so I have a fabric marker. I've folded this in half, and I'm just gonna boop, right, on both sides so I kind of can see it. This fades after like 30 minutes. So as you can see, I have a really clear understanding of where the seam that is currently in my skirt should go. This only applies to those of us who had to attach two pieces of the skirt together. My fabric width was not long enough, but if you just have one skirt piece, this is like so easy. But anyways, for me, I'm gonna attach this seam that you see here, which is like where the line where I connected the two main pieces of fabric. And I'm gonna make sure that it matches up to this midway point in my bodice. Okay, so what I wanna do is I want to attach the skirt and the bodice right sides together. Now, both of these parts of my bodice are right sides because they're both the good sides of the fabric, so not so hard for the bodice, but I do want to make sure that I'm attaching this to the right side of the skirt. Let me show you how to do that. Okay, I'm gonna lay my skirt out, the right side up. Then I'm gonna take the right side of my bodice, again, at that little center mark point, and I'm going to match it up to that seam. So I'm gonna go right here. And this is just to make sure that the bodice sits correctly on my side. But anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and pin the entire bodice to the skirt. So I'm gonna go through and carefully pin. I think one question beginner sewists always have is like, should I use pins? Should I use, I don't know, what's the word for the other one? Pins and, oh my gosh, clips? Yeah. I use both because there's kind of a time where both are needed. I personally like pins for when I'm attaching skirts because I just feel like it's a little bit more secure when you have, or a little easier to get into like the nooks and crannies, whereas with the clips, which I also really like, it's easier to use those for when you're, I don't know, not doing this. So the answer is both. I think you definitely need pins, so you should start with that if you're just trying to get one thing. And then as you get stronger as a sewist, you should consider clips. Okay, so I'm gonna pin this whole thing together and then take it to my machine and I'll show you. These are like the dorkiest headphones. If you wear glasses, you understand. Okay, so I've pinned my whole bodice to the skirt, right? I've pinned the whole thing. This is a really good opportunity to check your work. Because you've pinned it or clipped it, open it. Make sure it's correct. Make sure you have the good side of the fabric and the good side of the skirt on the right side. You don't understand how many times as a beginner, I was like, oh, I pinned it, it's good. And I've sewed it or sewn it. And then it's like, no, you put it the wrong way. So check your work, make sure it's actually on the right side. And then kind of measure it against yourself and think about it, whether it's the right length for you. It's going to scrunch up a little bit. So you're going to lose a little bit of width, but not that much. So it should kind of be fitting you where you want it, right? Like at the waist, etc. Oh my gosh, it's coming together. Okay, so now that you've kind of checked your work, you're like, it's the right size. I don't want to like cut the bodice down a little bit. The skirt is on the right side. Now we are going to sew the bodice and the skirt together. And then like we're in the home stretch. Let's do it. Okay, yay, the bodice is done. It's done, it's attached, it's all together. Boom, it's looking like a dress. Now we just have to insert the elastic and then sew it together and hem it, and that's it. Okay, so one thing about the elastic, we're gonna measure ourselves in a second of how to take your elastic measurement, but you're not gonna insert an elastic into every single channel, right? So I kind of mentioned this earlier. You're not inserting it in the first one because that's gonna be kind of your ruffle. You're gonna insert it starting at the second channel, and then you're gonna skip. So you're gonna do one elastic, skip, one elastic, skip, one elastic, skip, one elastic, etc. I'll show you how to insert the elastic in a second. But just so you know, you're not inserting elastic into every single channel because then you would be like too squeezed, okay? So that's one thing. The next thing is your elastic size. Now, you could just take your waist measurement especially if you want this to be comfortable. I do think that like if you're gonna use this for something like maternity, you want this to be as comfortable as possible. So you wanna make this like pretty, you know, not loose, but like just more give, so it's more comfortable for you. I personally like a very snatched sort of look for this dress. So I'm going to make this smaller than my waist. I'm going to measure my waist, right? I actually already know my waist measurement because I've done this so much. But like, let's say that you're measuring your waist. You probably want to take your clothes off, etc. But okay, so like, let's say that that's my waist measurement, right? Elastic stretches over time. So I'm going to like cut off like that much. Whatever. This is like not an exact science. And I'm going to measure it again and be like, does that feel right? Yep, that feels good to me. Knowing that I'm going to lose probably like a centimeter on each side because we have to sew the sides together with the elastic. This feels pretty good to me. But your elastic measurement, again, the easiest way to do it is just take your waist measurement, use that measurement all the way through, because since your waist, I don't know actually, if your waist is smaller than your bust size, then using your waist size is going to make it a little bit tighter on the bust. And again, that gives you a little bit more of a snatch. But if your waist size is bigger than your bust, then you can consider your bust measurement and maybe take a little bit off of that so that the bust still feels secure at the top. So you can really decide what elastic measurement you want. I'm going to do about that much, and I'm going to cut out the number of pieces that I need. So the next thing that you have to do, look at your bodice. Again, you're skipping the first one. You're going to go one, then the other, and then whatever, etc. Right? So you have to count how many elastic channels you're actually going to insert elastic into, depending on the length of your bodice. Once you have that number, cut off all your pieces of elastic and attach 2 paper clips to either side so that you can have all of your elastic prepped before we start to insert this. Let me show you how I do that. Okay, so I needed 12 pieces of elastic for my dress. So I'm gonna take each piece of elastic and I'm gonna put 1 safety pin on either side. I'll show you why in a second. Make sure that your safety pins are not kind of messed up, because that can cause some headaches later. Like, you want them to be kind of narrow, straight, ready to be inserted, not sort of like popping out or anything. So give them a good tug. Okay, so I'm going to do that to every single piece of elastic, because as I insert the elastic, I'm going to use a little bit of a safety hack so that I don't lose my elastic as I'm trying to insert it. This is a really good task if you're like watching TV and looking for something to do, because it takes a little bit of time, but it's not difficult. It's just like pushing the elastic all the way through this long channel can take a little bit of time. So I'm going to insert the elastic just like so. I'm going to give it the ability to sort of get through a little bit. I'm moving that safety pin all the way through. I'm going to take this end, the other end of the safety pin, and I'm going to clip it to the bottom channel that doesn't have an elastic. So that way I have that secured on one side, so I'm not losing the elastic, right? It's like nice and tight as I'm moving all the way through, because nothing is more annoying than being like halfway through a channel and then you lose your elastic. It sucks. So yeah, you're gonna do that all the way across to the other side of the channel. And again, this is gonna take a little bit. It's okay. Sit down, do something you like to do, put on a YouTube channel, listen to a podcast, you know, do something that brings you zen, so that this is not something that you're frustrated by. As you start to insert more and more of the elastic, it's going to get a little bit harder, right? Because you have more of the channels that are already done. So again, just take your time with this. It'll probably take you like an hour or so to get all of the elastic all the way through to the other side of the channels for the entire bodice. As you go, pull it, right? So it starts to give you more give. Oh, look how cute it's turning out. Oh my gosh. So go ahead and do that all the way through to the other side and all the way through the bottom of the bodice. Again, for me, that's going to be 12 different times that I have to do this. And we are done. The dress is officially complete, and I will be showing you final footage of it in a minute. I am really excited to be sharing this tutorial with you all because I keep coming back to this particular dress again and again because I do like how it kind of cinches me, and it is very versatile. It's something I can wear for work with a blazer again, or something, more casual. So if you do make this dress, let me know, and I will see you all next time.